why do I have an exemption? Now, an exemption is, so let's go on. So why do I have an exemption? Now, an exemption is the phrase that we used in the old school to show that you could discharge debt. You are exempt from having to pay for anything. An exemption in the old school was represented by your social security number without dashes. That represents a closed account. The social security number is an account number. So when you see it with dashes, that represents that it's open, which means that you are debiting and crediting that account. When you take the dashes away, that represents that it is closed, but it remains open for adjustment and set off, which is what we're going to be using it for. Okay, the social security number is the number that represents the artificial person straw man that is considered to be a transmitting utility. The reason it's called a transmitting utility because it is the bridge between the private and the public. Okay, the private is where the substance is. The private is where the value is. There is no value in the public because the public is bankrupt. Okay, so this is why they request your signature on everything, because your signature represents future labor. Okay, future labor, which is the only thing that they can have stock in because they are bankrupt entities. All right, labor is very valuable. Labor is very valuable. Okay. So it goes on, it says, you have an exemption because you have no money. There's a constitutional prohibition against paper money. A country, a state, has to have a name, people, boundaries, and money. If one of those elements is missing, there is no country. Okay, so this is why we're operating under a corporation, because the United States don't have no gold and silver. All right, so there really isn't a republic per se. All right, we're operating in this corporate democracy. Okay, if Connecticut has no people, it is not a state. If it has no geographic boundaries, it is not a state. If it has no money, it is not a state. Look at the cause and effect. Why is there no money in circulation? The reason there's no money in circulation is because of 1933. Money is gold and silver. We have to understand what money is. Constitutionally mandated money for payment of debts is gold and silver, which is called money of exchange. So there's no money per se, quote unquote, in circulation. We do have a medium of exchange, what people call money, which is called Federal Reserve notes. So why is there, it says, who had authority to demand the money to be given to the Federal Reserve banks by May 1st, 1933? Who had that authority? Did the people, were we responsible for that? No, we weren't, if we were in our private capacity, but that's what they did. They came up with the idea to change your status to that of a dependent. Once you became a dependent, the doctrine of parens patria would step in, and now they had jurisdiction over you, or what is called in personam jurisdiction over your person. And now they replaced, because no private person was required to give gold and silver to the government. They didn't have any authority to request that from private citizens, only people in the public, which are government employees. But because the public had been sufficiently dumbed down, and which they had been working on for the last 30 years, as my research shows me, they reached the point of capitulation where they knew in 1933 they could fool everybody and have them turn in their gold. The first thing was they had to get everybody out of the country, because in the early 1900s, the majority of people lived in the country. There weren't all these cities like where they are now. I saw an old picture of Atlanta, Georgia in 1900. It wasn't nothing but a little small blip on the map, and most of Atlanta, Georgia was a peach field. That's why the main street in Georgia is Peachtree Avenue, because it was a peach tree. It wasn't nothing. And the federal prison that they built here, Atlanta Federal P, which is one of the oldest prisons in the country, they had prisoners build it. They had on the stripe let me see if they got a picture of this, as I can show it to y'all.